is a dear friend. We actually, Sita and I, and he actually came to Ananda the same year.
July the 4th.
July the 4th. Okay.
In 1977.
And for decades, I guess, he's been working with how to be prepared, whether it was with Boy Scouts or in the workshops that he's developed, that he's given in many different countries now. So when we had this Road Ahead course going on, we thought it would only make sense to, we've talked about history, we've talked about philosophy, we've talked about metaphysical theories, astrology, and the yugas. And we thought, well, it might not hurt to have a very practical course as well about how to prepare and understand what we're in the middle of. So, Kabir, happy to bring you back to the U.S. for a little bit for all of us, and you can just take it over and go from there.
All right. Let's, before I go into more detail about introduction and into our topic, let's just take a moment to close our eyes and take a deep breath. Just be in the moment, in the presence of God. Feel the divine inspiration, that connection. There's nothing more important than that deeper connection that we have with God in every moment. Feel that. And I'll just say a little prayer, and please feel that you can just quietly listen to it and try to continually feel God's presence within. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, friend, beloved God, Lord Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Sri Yukteswarji, beloved Master Paramahansa Yoganandaji, friend and guide Swamiji, saints of all religions, we humbly and lovingly bow at thy feet. Divine Mother, thou art in our hearts, in our minds. We are one with thee. Help us to understand thy will, to follow thy guidance, to hear thy whisper within, taking us through the storms, through these opportunities for evolution and transformation. Help us to not only grow and expand in our consciousness, but help us to help others, that we may be instruments for thee. We are ever thine. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Amen. Let's just meditate for about a minute. Feel the presence. Amen. Okay. Well, again, my friends, it's wonderful to be with you all here today and to see what we can do to explore this topic. It's very important. In fact, it's an understatement to say we live in interesting times. And this has been actually a topic I've talked about for about 40 years before these interesting times. You know, when I first came to Ananda back in 1977, and Murti was just introducing that he and I and Sita came in the same year. And I came in on the 4th of July in 1977. And as a young'un and as a school teacher and working there in the community. And at that time, Swami Kriyananda would give talks sometimes about preparing for challenging times. And he would say, and he would give often, you know, maybe once or twice a year, he'd share this quote from Master, and he'd talk about how Yogananda would discuss or share a little bit of information about what's coming. And he would say, "You have no idea what cataclysm is coming," you know, and in the sense that letting people know things are going to change, things are going to be very challenging, and simply because he let us know that, it indicated the need to be preparing for it. And so Swami was very clear about that. We should be preparing. We don't know when, as he would say, we don't know when it's going to be. He assumed that it would be in our lifetimes because Master came and was warning people then. It probably wouldn't be 500 years in advance, but probably something happening in our lifetimes, or at least some of us. And so I took that to heart, actually, because I'd had some different kind of indicators that something was coming in life, and it was necessary to really listen to what Swami was saying and what Master was saying. So I, independent of that, actually, I started to work with Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts in America and did a lot of training with them. And then out of my own interest, I went into survival training and developed survival training skills, and also became a teacher for survival training, and just building up a number of different skills, mostly just because I loved it. You know, I loved being in the outdoors, and I love the idea of self-reliance, developing enough skill and knowledge and nature wisdom, one might say, that just that awareness that whatever the situation, there was a solution. And I could draw upon whatever I knew, but also draw upon a greater wisdom that's around me and always find a solution. And I just really enjoyed that attitude and that awareness. And of course, I worked with a lot of children with that. And I gave some workshops with that as well. And at one point, I was living in Italy, no, actually before that, in Ananda Village, back in the 90s, Swami asked me to organize a emergency preparedness, or well, that's what we called it basically then, emergency preparedness for the whole community. So for 6 months at Ananda Village, back in the 90s, I did develop a whole plan for, and we implemented this plan for preparing all of us. At that point, it was close to 400 people there, including about 125 children, that we wanted to be ready in case something came about in the world, economic or the climate. Well, we weren't talking about climate change at that point, but change for sure. And things that could happen that would make life more challenging on a physical level, an outer level. And Swami said, you know, when that happens, there could be extra hundreds or even thousands of other people coming here. And our job will be to be prepared for that. And so we can help each other and help others that come to us. So I put together I was coordinating this effort that included, you know, medical and food storage. We stored about at least 70 to somewhere between 70 to 100,000 pounds of food and water, and did a lot of training with people and put that together. When I later 90s went to Italy, Swami asked me to do the same thing in Assisi, so I did it there as well. And he and I did sometimes some co-lectures. He would we actually went up one time to Lugano and in Switzerland, and he would give the first part of the talk about what Master's teachings are about preparing for challenging times, and I would give the practical aspect of it. And so it was a good team, and it was a very beautiful way of serving, because it's not about preparing out of fear. It's actually, for me, it's all about service. It doesn't really matter to me on a personal level. If challenges come, we'll deal with it. But in fact, we all have an opportunity to grow in a tremendous way. It's not just an interesting time, it's a transformative time. This is, we have now, in my way of seeing things, I think a lot of us too, realize that we are now in that time that Master had talked about. It's not at a cataclysmic level, but certainly changes are coming, because he spoke about this evolution of consciousness going from a relatively darker time of Kali Yuga into a lighter time of a relatively lighter time, I should say, of Dwapara Yuga, where the consciousness expands and grows. It's not at the highest point, certainly, but the consciousness of the planet is shifting and growing and evolving, and that is going to happen. It is happening, and there's a transition that occurs between those different changes of consciousness on the planet and the energy levels. And we are in that transition. We're sort of finishing up the transition. In fact, one thought the transition would be done, but obviously there are pieces of an older way of thinking and a consciousness that doesn't really fit into a lighter consciousness. And that is having to be decided on. People have to work with that and let it go. And some people don't want to let it go. So there are battles, and they're great difficulties. And I remember thinking when I was earlier at Ananda, the awareness came that, this is a time that I think I consciously came into this incarnation for. Certainly for the opportunity to be part of a spiritual community and with brothers and sisters, spiritual brothers and sisters, and to grow in my meditation and inwardly, but also to be able to face the challenges that we have in this particular phase of life and evolution on this planet, because again, it's transformative. This is a powerful time. It's not just challenging, it is powerfully beneficial if we get it right, if we look at it in the right way, if we approach it and develop the right attitudes, skills, knowledge, primarily these kind of things, and to be able to go through the challenges and issues that we must be facing at this time. It's unavoidable. Everybody is affected. In my way of looking at it, the virus is just still stage one of several stages to come in this transformation. And it's not scary, not at all, not in the least. And we're going to talk about how to replace fear, with something that's higher awareness and where you just know that it's okay, but I have a responsibility to learn certain things and to prepare in certain ways for myself, my family, for others. And yes, for myself, but it's not about me. And I think a lot of you would appreciate that too. It's that, yeah, we need to take care of ourselves so we can help other people, and we can be an example of this uplifting, positive attitude and knowledge that people can gain as we share along the path during these times. It's a very exciting time in its own way. So before I go into a little bit more detail, I'd love to hear from you and just some insight that will help me as well. Why is it that you're here? What have you done in this? Is this new for you? Have you been thinking about it? That'll give me a sense for what we're trying to do here. Well, let me put a few of these pieces together and move on into a little bit more understanding. And then again, if you have questions, or if I'm bringing up something that is you need to have a little bit more information on, let me know, and we'll see if we can go into it at this point. It's a journey, number one. This is not a time where you're going to have all the answers given to you. It's a whole, as I said, it's an adventure, it's a challenge, it's a journey. And where's it all going? That's the beauty of it. It's going toward freedom. It's going toward incarnations where we're free from all the cycles of reincarnation, and we're able to just commune with God, to be with God. That's where it's going. You know, we are, as I think it was Giselle said, we're being pushed to the wall, and in fact, everybody on the planet, everyone, every soul is given opportunities to make choices now. In fact, it's been that way for a long time. We're always given choices, but the options are narrowing. You know, what do we choose that can bring us peace and joy, no matter what the situation? You know, I love this story that of a couple of ladies who were in a Nazi prisoner of war camp, a concentration camp in the World War II, and they were two sisters, and they were in horrible conditions. And one sister was on the verge of going crazy with it and depressed and was not able to really cope with the situation. The other sister became a saint, same conditions, but they responded to it in different ways. The sister that grew from it maintained a certain kind of an attitude and a devotion, an inward connection with God. And outwardly, she cared more about what others were suffering from and what she could do to help them. She became a saint through that opportunity, actually would be the word. Yes, we're pushed to the wall, but always for the purpose of helping us to let go of certain misconceptions, misunderstandings about who we are, about what life is about, and to gain a deeper awareness and a wisdom, and then certain understanding and knowledge that will help us to go through these and in a way that expands our consciousness, expands it so much that we become one, we become free. That is the opportunity that is presented to us now. And when we put it in that perspective, and not that it's not about having to let go and having to suffer and being afraid. It's about expanding. It's the opposite from what it seems to be. Expanding consciousness and awareness, knowledge, and the heart. In fact, the heart wants to contract. Say, oh no, what's going to happen next? The heart needs to expand and to embrace and to become so complete that all there is peace, and all there is wisdom and knowledge. And so this is the opportunity. Now, in this particular time together, we're going to focus on primarily some of the physical kind of things that can be done, because that sometimes is, I mean, we do have human bodies. We do need to take care of them. There are certain aspects of care for these bodies and the minds and the hearts that need to be understood and prepared for. But primarily, well, we'll look at that, of course, but it isn't the only solution. We're going to spend more time on that one in this particular talk. But one time I remember recently when I was giving a workshop in Palo Alto about this, saying, well, if you had several options, one was to be having the being in a community, or having all the material things together, like the food and the water, or you just able to pray. What would you think is the most important thing? Or having skills. And one person said, oh, I want to have all the food and the water, everything together, I'll feel much better. And I said, actually, that's true. That's the way most people think, but it's actually not the number one priority. The number one priority, from my point of view and from my understanding of the teachings, to be able to go through this time, the number one priority is that, one, we're meditating and we're praying, we're communing with God, we're connected to the divine source. because as we've heard in the Bhagavad Gita, and that even a little practice of this inward religion will free one from dire fears and colossal sufferings. Even a little practice of this inward religion will free one from dire fears and colossal sufferings. I know for a fact that's true, and I experienced that, and so this is again moving in that understanding, that opportunity of expansion of consciousness, that we focus inwardly as number one, developing the meditation. For many years, Swami would say that, and I would say, there's a lot of things I can do. Meditation is good, but I've got to do other things too. And even Lahiri Mahashaya, who I feel a strong connection with, that people come to him with all sorts of problems, and he'd always say, meditate, meditate, meditate. That was his answer. Often, and he would give a lot of deeper instruction into the meditation practices. But I finally, a few years ago, came to realize that is it. Because, again, I'm just going to be brief on this because I know there'll be many other opportunities to explore this idea, and you have had. But that through the meditation and the prayer in particular, that combination and feeling the presence of God, you're in your higher self. You're connected to who you actually are, and you're connected to the inner guru and the wisdom and the consciousness that is magnificent and beyond all these earthly worries and concerns and challenges. You're in a state where this is where we're going, where the wisdom will guide us, where the whispering of the divine within will tell us where we need to go, what we need to do, how we need to be prepared, and even more so, tell us and reassure us, it's okay, I'm taking care of you. And here's what you need to do, or just relax, feel the peace, and I'll be with you. Meditation brings about that consciousness that allows us to be truly divine inside and be instruments of the divine through us. So that's number one. And I know that you all understand some of that because you're connected with Ananda as well. And obviously you're beautiful beings and done a lot in your lives, I'm sure. So meditation and prayer, number one. Number two, I would put on the list not as preparing all the physical things yet, but I'd say community. Now, a couple of people have already commented, well, they're living alone or they're not in the community. And yes and no. You all are part of a community. Here's a community right here, in a sense. This is the beginning of it. And community is not just a physical location. It's a connection, primarily. Number one, it's the understanding that we're connecting inside and in outwardly in conversation and workshops and discussions and so forth, developing that relationship to others, and at the core of that is the connection to the divine through others that are participating in that virtual community, as we might even say these days too. That it is important to reach out and to be connecting to others and to form conversation and dialogues and satsang, Sunday services, prayer together, meditation together, no matter where we are. That is a primarily a very important aspect. One of the things that Master talked about, Yogananda as well, was the need to start to think about having places where there is land and people could have garden and be outside of the city. And I know I've lived in cities for decades, in different places, now in Delhi, India, and outside of Delhi, Gurgaon. And I know it's a little harder in the cities, and yet the Master counseled all of us to be able to find a way that we can get outside of the cities at times, or in an emergency time. If we start with the idea that I can't do that, then you probably won't. We won't. But if we start with the understanding, okay, God, if that's what you want, show me how to do that. This is the attitude that we want to take for all of this. Okay, God, I don't know exactly what to do. Show me, tell me, guide me, and bring that into my life. So we start with the understanding, if Master was saying, find a way to be connected with community, and even if it's a few people living on land outside of the city, then there will be a solution for that. One of you had mentioned that you have land outside. Well, it's possible, this is an idea, that you could say, well, if some of you are in need, bring your tent and we can camp together. You can have a spot, out on my land, and we can try to do some things together. We'll do workshops next weekend, and practice some of these skills and understanding. You can form your own communities as well. By the grace of God, it will happen. And it's so the focus that I have is that there is a solution for everything. And that if we are choosing to think positively and optimistically, with hope and with the joy that, okay, God is coming through and will help us with every aspect of this, then solutions will be found. People will come and join hands together and be able to get through whatever the challenge is that we have to face or we're presented with. So a lot of it is attitude. We talked about prayer, meditation, community. Developing that right attitude is essential. That fear is the opposite of what we need to have right now. Yes, fear can be a great motivator, but in the end, you go to a dead end with fear, generally speaking. It moves you, starts to move you, but then you bang into a wall because you can't see. Fear creates the walls. Understanding and wisdom helps you to realize there's no wall and that you can just keep on moving. And the mind itself creates the walls and the barriers to the solutions that are important for us, that we're seeking. So being able to maintain that inner peace, that joy, that connected aspect to the divine and to each other. This is probably the most important thing. This combination is much more important than anything else that I'm going to be talking about here. Although the physical level is also needed, but it's down the list. It's not number one on the list. So we talked about the community of meditation, prayer, community, and so forth. One of the and attitudes. Here's a thought that Master had said. He gave this particular guidance. He said to be unshaken in the midst of crash and breaking worlds. To be unshaken in the midst of crash and breaking worlds. Again, an indication that, well, life in this world is going to have opportunities or times where it is going to be shaking for sure. Will it crash? Certain aspects of it will. And yet, any time that there is something that is dissolving, something new is being established and built. And again, when we have that right vision, that inner vision, that intuitive vision, we'll start to see, ooh, there's something magnificent that's starting to happen on this planet. We're not needing to focus on if we listen to the media too much, it can be overwhelming. And I would encourage people not to listen to that so much, because there's a darker current that is flowing through the media at this time and capturing people's fear. And of course, it lends itself to higher income for the media giants. It is important to be aware of current trends and situations, but not to indulge in it because it's counterproductive. It builds the fear. Yes, the world is breaking apart. Aspects of it are breaking, cracking, and maybe crashing, and that's okay, because there is something else that is being built and established in this world that we are part of. We are definitely connected to something that's expansive and developing in the most beautiful, beautiful way. We're part of that. and we'll get through the challenges. Even a little practice of this inward religion will free one from dire fears and colossal sufferings. Practice the religion, the meditation and prayer, and service to others, and the study of the teachings. Now, so again, our direction is to be unshaken, be still, be centered, come even from a place of joy, seeing the bigger picture, and trying to put some of these pieces together. Okay, so now I'll just move into the next stage of this conversation, which is what are the scenarios that are possible in this crash and breaking world? And I'm going to be focusing in the remaining part of this conversation on basically a level one of several levels of scenarios. We all know that, the ultimate scenario could be, that Master even talked about a third world war. He talked about an economic crash, and he didn't, as far as I know, he didn't specifically talk about climate change, but he did say Boston would be tropical, and that's sort of an indication climate is changing. And he might have said other things in that regard too. Certainly he talked about change in pretty well everything as it's collapsing and then being rebuilt. But we're not going to talk about this. There is a way to prepare for everything. We've talked about that inward aspect. Even the outward, there is a way to have certain things in place. I'm going to talk about primarily level one today. And what is that level one? Let me sit up here a bit more. Level one is what I put in as a situation where you can stay at home because you are prepared. It's a situation where, for example, electricity might be out. Maybe the storms have taken out electricity for a period of time. Fires, that's fairly common, and as we all have experienced at different times. It could be that, well, let's just focus on that aspect of electricity being out for say a shorter duration, couple weeks, something like that. And one might say, oh, that's all right, I've got candles. But that's great. But when electricity goes out, so does refrigeration, and food storage is affected. So do the stores. The stores' refrigeration goes out. People run down to the stores and buy everything they can, and they may or may not restock in a period of time. So that might be something that comes up. It could be that if it's wintertime, heating goes out, and that water supplies based on pumps and so forth. So if it's a very localized situation, okay, there are ways of getting the water and so forth. But if it's a more widespread situation, say citywide or even countywide or broader, that you're without these supplies, these essential supplies, then you would have to leave sooner than later. But in scenario one, I'm going to say we're going to be discussing the idea that it's okay to stay because you're prepared to stay in your house for a period of time, say up to a couple of weeks or something like that. That you've stocked up a little bit. Just very briefly, scenario two is where the situation is a little bit more serious, where there might be social unrest. There might be situations where you are required to leave your home for a period of time. So that would be an evacuation, and there are certain ways to prepare for that as well, and have things ready to go. That's a scenario two, and a scenario three is where you're having to vacate permanently. You just have to change everything, and that is so there's a way to prepare for that. But we're going to focus, there's many stages, and this workshop could be a whole week long, actually, and even longer. And why would that be? Because we can have all the materials together. Anybody can go shopping on Amazon now and get all this stuff together. But it doesn't mean that you're going to be prepared. It's not it only, as we've already talked about, only about having the material things together. It's there, yes, if you're even meditating, marvelous, and praying and working with community and developing the right attitudes and understanding inside, fantastic, all most essential. And then have all your material stuff together, great. But if you don't know what to do with it, if you don't have the knowledge, the skills, it gets a little harder. So in longer workshops, I would do a lot more detailed training. You know, there are certain skills. Now, I'm going to shift over to screen share and share a document that you will be receiving. Okay, I think I've got it. Let's see if we've got that right. It's coming here. Okay, so now this is, again, there are two parts of this. One is going to be the level 1 daily carry kit, and sorry, excuse me, and level 2, the home kit. This is all for what I'm still calling the level 1 scenario. So, but what we'll see is that with the home kit, skills are very handy to have, you know, and so let's look through that. And again, we don't have to spend a lot of time on this one. I'm going to spend more time on the second one, level 2 home kit. But this one is, what I encourage people to do is just have a few things that are with you, basically in your bag that you're carrying with you, or some of these things could be just in the car and ready to go as needed. But I put these in different categories. One is the air. Now, always, if we look at the priorities of survival, and most people, if in a workshop where we're all together, I'd say, okay, what are the priorities in survival situations or emergency, or we actually get away from the word survival, call it self-reliance. You know, what are the issues that we need to face and prepare for? And people will say food. You know, I have to have my pasta. I can agree with that part. I mean, I sympathize with that part. But actually, air. You know, if you're breathing bad air, as we now know more clearly than ever, you know, you could be taking in certain viruses and bacteria that could be detrimental, smoke and or chemicals and so forth that can really harm you and debilitate you very, very rapidly. And then making your preparedness and self-reliance and working with community almost impossible because you're sick. And so we have to protect ourselves and we all must, and everyone knows this now, but 6 months ago, people didn't know this, you know, that with our DT's workshops, you know, that you have to have the masks with you. The N95 face masks are with the valves in them are very good for, you know, the chemical and so forth and pollution levels, bad air quality. But now it's also known that you don't need an N95. That means 95% of the pollutants are taken out. You're only breathing 5% what's remaining, and that's okay. There's even a 99, you know, so it's harder to breathe, however. That's why they put in the valves, and so you can exhale out. But that's not so good during this virus because, you know, we want to protect ourselves and protect others from our breathing. And so we all know this now, so I don't need to go through that. But it's important to have some masks at hand at all times. Even if you have a regular mask, keep a couple in stock, you know, because sometimes they get lost or whatever, or dirty. And so that's just put it in your pack or your bag that you carry in the car or with you at all times. I would suggest also now under the category of shelter and clothing, there's, let me see if I can make that a little bit bigger for us. That may be too big. Where'd it go? Okay. I think that was too big here. Let me, come back. Okay. Is that okay? Yeah, I think we're okay with that. Okay, so we have The emergency poncho, it's shelter. It's in case you're out and about and you have to be outside. You should always have a simple little poncho, at least. Higher quality ones for longer term, but something simple. And they have these little mylar blankets or bags that are useful. I always get the bag myself because the blankets tend to just, if you look it up, mylar bag on Amazon, all these things you can buy on Amazon. This is simple stuff right now too. It's very useful. It's a reflective bag and keeps the heat in. It's very, very thin, and yet it's very efficient at keeping your heat. Water bottle, obviously, and Nagaline or something that's a higher quality that is not glass, although glass is preferred and for a variety of reasons. But for long-term, you want something that is not necessarily going to break. And this particular carry-on, whatever you use is fine. The other levels you need to be a little more careful with it. But so if you have a 1 liter bottle or something like that, it just means you could be drinking and you can add water to it. We're not talking about filtration yet. This is just daily carry. Always have some lighters around, some matches, a couple of different ways of making fire. Definitely your flashlight and batteries, having a little bit of a first aid kit with you, and medical, some tissues for a variety of reasons, having a little bit of food snack, a few power bars. Again, this is just a very simple level. You just always have all these pieces with you. And so various scenarios that occur, you'll have some basic supplies for each one of these areas here. Always a smartphone. Everybody carries a smartphone anyway, but the extra power supply is very important these days and will be increasingly so. Definitely having a knife with you and keeping it sharp. So learning how to keep that knife sharp and having the tools for sharpening it. And duct tape has a variety of very important purposes. And in workshops we'd show, but I think everybody knows it's the duct tape. It's available everywhere, even in India. I get it here too. So I won't go into detail of that, but it's certainly something wonderful to have. You can even, if let's say 10 or 15 feet, you can even wrap it around a pencil. So there you have ability to communicate by having a pencil and pen, pencil and pad. In fact, that should go under communication. I'll add that to it too. A pencil and a little pad of paper, so you can leave notes and so forth. It is good to carry some extra cash in small denominations. Just in general, your emergency money. Something comes up, you can take care of it if it's small enough. And then your contact sheet. This is actually going to be part of the bigger, the home kit. Your data sheet with contact information is important. And yes, you might have that in your phone, and that's great as long as your phone is functioning. But at this level, that's fine too. And then USB drive with photos of your essential documents. That is also going to be in the home kit. But if you have your phone, if you have some place where you've got your passport and your driver's license and your medical records if you want and things like that, you've got it all set ready to go. Even if you don't have your computer with you, you'll have your core, your essential information with you. So now you might add to that list other things that are important for you. Example, some medicines. If you, an extra pair of glasses, so things that are essential to you and your welfare that you know of, think it through. This is not an exhaustive list by any means. This is the basic core list. And think it through again to what you feel most comfortable with having. And this is not necessarily a big emergency situation. There are little situations that occur all the time. I use my knife all the time. I love it. I just carry that with me. Lighting the candles at the altar. I've got my lighter ready. And yes, as someone just mentioned, keeping your phone charged is a really good idea. And carrying that extra power supply with it. Communication is going to be one of the keys, to getting through these times, and having the smartphones. In fact, on level three list, we've got having solar chargers and things like that. So you can't depend on the electrical outlets to charge up your phones. You probably will need a solar charger for that, but I'm jumping ahead. So there it is. That's a pretty basic list. Now I want to move into the second one. This is the core of our conversation today. Let me expand this one a little bit. There. Get that one a little bit bigger for you. Oh, I'll get that out. There we go. Is that clear enough? Everybody can see it okay? Hopefully so. Well, this is, we call the home kit. And again, the situation is where you are going to be able to stay at home, but let's just assume your electricity is out, your ability to go shopping is reduced or minimalized or negligible, non-existent, and therefore, without electricity for a couple of weeks, your water, the water pumps may be out. Let's just assume that you're able to be there, but there's nothing outside that you can really be dependent on any longer. The heating, the water, the lighting, and so forth. Now, we talked about air as being the number one. Oh, by the way, this particular kit is designed to take care of a couple of people for 1 to 2 weeks, depending on there are different variations in it that you can look at. This is just a guide, and what you would do is to really look at it and say, okay, what do I need? What do I have? And start to put it together. Now, over on this area, over on the side here, you can say, okay, I've got that, but it's not enough in this particular kit. It would be very beneficial to start to put some of these pieces together, and that some of it you have in the kitchen, that's great, so forth. But if you make sure that you know where things are located, because a level 2 can easily become a level 3. Level 3 is when you're going to have to vacate for a period of time, hopefully to return to your home. But this one is a level. This is a level 2 where you're thinking, okay, I can't be dependent on the water, the food, and all these kind of aspects, the heating or the cooling. Let me make sure I can handle it on my own or in community, and so forth. Here's the list. Let's go through. We talked about the air as being the number 1 priority, okay? And the face masks and so forth, okay? Even having a bandana or something across the face is really good to have, but I would have more of them because, and look up at the top here, I always have these skills, how to know that you're breathing bad air, and because you might not see it, but it still might be toxic, and then selecting the right air mask. Now, we would go further into this in a longer workshop, but most of that is common sense. Now, a lot of people have been developing those skills. Now, the next skill that there's a certain order that I'm putting these skills in, the preparedness aspects, and it really depends on the scenario of the situation. But if you look at it this way, in 3 minutes, without air, you can do some damage to the brain. Actually, no, I think it's more than 3 minutes, but we're using the number 3, okay, because there's the law of threes. They also say 3 hours in cold temperature or cold and windy or wet and windy can lead to issues for the core temperature of the body, and that affects the brain, the ability for the brain to function well and to logically and to rationally. And so it's essential to keep the core temperature. And included in that, and we're coming back to this one, is the outer shelter, but also your clothing, regarded as shelter. Water. In 3 days without water, and I'm coming back to all these things, 3 days without water can, again, affect the brain, affect the body, affect the strength. Even 1 day or 2 days for sure you'll feel headachy and diminished energy and so forth. And especially if you're drinking bad water, that it could make the body so debilitated that you can't really function. You can't survive, without medical assistance or support. And so very important to have water. But the 3 minutes with air, 3 hours with the cold, or even the extreme heat, that will make the body dysfunctional. 3 days without water. Okay, then we talked about fire, and we'll come back to that again for cooking, for warmth, for security, for light, and so forth. And then, but the medical is going to be essential to really look closely at that. And down on the list is food. Most people think, oh, I have to have my food. Well, yeah, but not the first day or two. If you've gotten some food bars and you've got some nuts and a few things that can get you through, in an emergency, yes, put it together. Think about the food storage. We'll get to that in a minute. But it is not the first priority. But certainly it's important. So we'll come back to that. Communication, tools, and navigation, and then some personal things, and then a little bit about security, and then how to prepare for evacuation for level 3. Okay, so let's go back over that. Are there any questions at this particular point? I've been doing all the talking, but I know we don't have a lot of time, but anything anyone wants to comment on or question at the moment? Or
I do have a question.
Yeah, Amar?
Yes. What power source can one get?
Well, let's go here. Okay, power source, they're different things that, let's assume first of all that you have some electricity, so that's great. But if you don't have electricity after it's shutting down, so this scenario, no electricity, a lot of people have backup generators. So if you're in a situation where you can have a backup power generator with fuel sources, back in Assisi and at Ananda, but especially in Assisi, we installed a big generator, and that could power the house and the maid area, and so cooking can happen and so forth. We also put in solar in Assisi, and a lot of people now are doing that much more. So if you have solar backup, again, these are investments. But a very simple thing to have on hand more immediately, again, available on Amazon, all this is battery backups, so that, for example, I don't have all my emergency supplies here. They're actually in Assisi. So although I could show you, if I were there, I could show you, but a battery pack about like this size, which is, you can plug it into the wall if there's electricity, but if not, it's solar. You can power it with solar backup, a solar panel, a small one, and it's enough to power your computer, recharge your phones, and to be able to provide a little lighting with LED lighting. So 3 essential little things. The phone for sure, and a little bit of lighting is essential at nighttime too. So generators and solar and battery backup are 3 really good things to have thought through. And certainly I would go for the battery backup sooner than later, because it's electricity goes off and on in any case. I'm used to it in India where it goes off every day for a few hours, and our house has a generator, so it immediately comes back on. Okay. Yeah. Now, in terms of the heating, because let's look at that here. Keeping the core temperature up, and without electricity, the heating systems are down or the cooling systems are down. And yes, if you have a wood stove, or something of that nature where you can create heat if you have, that's great, and to stock up on the wood. It's also, there's solar panels that produce warmth of the water and not just the electricity, but if you're able to invest in all of that, that's great. But let's assume also that maybe it's not possible to invest in these things. So how do you keep yourself warm? Even inside of a house that's getting really cold, it's wintertime and you have no electricity and you're going to stick it out for a few more days because they say it's coming back on shortly. If you put a tent in your living room or in a bedroom, it contains the heat a lot better. And even a candle inside of a tent can make it very nice. I've done that. I've camped in snow caves before, in winter camping, and it's I know it's possible if you have the right things. A candle in a little tent is a very nice thing to have, or a couple of them if you're careful with it, and that's important too. But putting up a tent in the house is great, and there are different ways of putting things like mattresses together to provide insulation, but it's very good if you have sleeping bags ready, and there if you have down, or there are many very fine fibers now. 30-degree bag is very common, or even a -10 bag, something like that, and you can just open it up. So you're protected in case it gets really cold. You have some blankets, and you've got a sleeping bag and a tent. You could be in your house, even if the house itself is 30 degrees, you could be much cozier inside of your tent with having inside of your apartment or inside your house in a tent. So that it's very effective that way. These are just some ideas, but the skills are, one, to purchase the right kind of a tent and to know how to set it up, and there are how to put together blankets and sleeping bag systems. I use a sleeping bag system so that, for example, it's not just a sleeping bag. There could be a bag liner. There could be an interior that goes inside the bag, and something outside the bag that increases the warmth, and even waterproofing it if necessary. Now these are skills, but if you and again, some of you might have that, especially Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts, but starting with getting some of the basic supplies, anybody can use. Learn how to set up the tent. Don't just buy the tent. If you're going to do that, practice it. Know how to set it up, and how do you, and also to buy a self-standing tent, not a tent that you have to stake into your floor. It doesn't work very well to nail your tent into the living room floor. Get a self-standing, self-supporting tent, and they're often these little dome tents and things like that. Just pop up nice and easily. But clothing is an essential part of maintaining your core temperature. And so a skill is learning how, one is to know what fabrics are appropriate. Most people love to have cotton and so forth, but if it's raining outside, it's disastrous. It will bring your core temperature down very rapidly. That does not dry very quickly and does not insulate you if it's wet. And so you need to understand a little bit more about fabrics, and wool is really the number one choice. I've got wool pants and wool shirts and things like that as part of my emergency stock, but dressing in layers, knowing how to do it like that. So if it's hot, you can take off layers. You've got 3 or 4 layers, and if it's cold, you add the layers back on again, including your, like for top layers, an undershirt, a good quality shirt. Even if you can have polypropylene undershirts, or if you're going to use cotton, you can take it off if it's going to get cold and wet. But you have other layers that are non-cotton as well, and including thermal layers. Some of these wool blend thermal underwear, superb. It's wonderful to have, and again, you can put it on, take it off. And so you're preparing in layers, and you're researching a little bit about the fabrics and materials. Definitely have a cap or hat, because about 30% of the body heat goes out through the head. And so you head and the extremities, your head, hands, and feet need to have protective gear on them. And people neglect that sometimes, especially with the feet. Get really good socks, and you can have layers in socks. REI is one of my all-time favorite stores, that a little pricey, but now you can do competitive shopping with Amazon and so forth. But really good to have an umbrella, pair of leather gloves, because you never know when you need to do something that could harm your hands. And again, the rain ponchos, I would get a better quality one for this one. Now the one that your carry bag is very, the light plastic kind of thing, emergency kind of thing. But this one should be a really good quality. Rain gear, it can be just regular rain gear, rain jacket and rain pants. The rain poncho, if you're carrying a pack, covers the pack as well. So it's your choice, but certainly some rain gear. And then you have your jacket and winter coat, and the shoes and the socks. We talked about the socks, that yes, you get some high quality socks, but also high quality shoes. If you're in a difficult situation and you're walking outside and it's raining, and you're just wearing your normal shoes, get shoes that have Gore-Tex, in them, or they're waterproofed in some way, and always have good shoes. Even if you don't wear them normally, have them nearby, so that if in an emergency situation, you can pop on your shoes immediately and protect yourself from glass and for other situations, fire or ash and things like that, but also the rain. People neglect their feet a lot, and it's very debilitating. If their feet get burned or cold, sorry, a little allergy here, but just go ahead and invest in good shoes. That is I think is one of the must. A note just came up that Army Navy surplus stores are very useful. Yes, absolutely. That's where I bought my wool thermal underwear and the some other kinds of things like gloves and poncho.
You have to bring your mic back down, Kabir.
Thank you.
There you go.
Okay, thank you very much. So, okay, we were talking about Army Navy surplus. Okay, and that's a very good resource as well. Do a little research and checking online. One thing I like about Amazon is that, as you all know, is that you can read the reviews. And some things sound cheap and are cheap, and the quality may not be what you want. And because in an emergency situation, you don't want to have just the cheapest stuff. You want to have things that can endure and to go through a challenging situation with you without breaking down, and being used not only by yourself, but maybe others as well. So that is important to understand quality, and that's part of a training too. You can look at different things and say, this one's cheaper, it's going to break. This one is better built and longer lasting. Reading the reviews gives a lot of clues. And so even if you're going to buy it in Army Navy surplus or wherever, going to Amazon first and doing a little research is very useful. Now, water, this is a major concern that many people in emergency situations around the world, like say, take an earthquake, they may die from bad water versus the actual earthquake itself, because water, once it's contaminated, it can be and you might not even know it, or people get so thirsty they're drinking bad water that you can die from bad water, and many people do. More people die from bad water than the earthquakes in generally in those situations. So again, skills are really required for the water aspect of it. To one, know what dehydration is doing to you, and to recognize it, and to recognize it in others. Again, 3 days without water is debilitating. And the brain will not function in the same way. The energy levels are down. The body feels horrible, the headaches and so forth. And so it's not about dying. It's about becoming debilitated so you can't function. And that can lead to serious issues. So knowing what those symptoms are is very important. And then how to find water. If you're in the city, and you've run out of water, number one, down here, what we suggest is the general rule is that you have enough water stored. Basically, the rule is 1 gallon per day per person. So if you're wanting a week's supply of water for 2 people, that's 14 gallons. That's just essential water for drinking, bare minimal washing, brushing teeth, and a little bit of hygiene, so forth. It's minimal, but it's enough to get by. You have to learn how to do bucket baths, and I used to teach the kids how to bathe in 1 quart of water. So that they, there's a way to do it, and it works. And so, but to have it stored, this is one of the very important things in your house that you can do. Just, you can get some water bottles and put them in the closet, and or you have bigger containers, and it's good for a certain amount of time, and so forth. But one of the skills is learning how to purify the water, using, for example, like a water purification tablets that are available at REI or Amazon. Just 1 little tablet into a quart of water, and let it sit for 30 minutes and shake it up, and it's like a chlorine or an iodine, and it will kill the bacterium and the viruses in the water. But it tastes bad. It's not great. And so, if you have a little bit of tea or something like that to flavor it, then it's okay. But it's not the best long term. The best long term is to, one, is have some water stored. 2 is have a water filter. That you, and there are a lot of good water filters out there now, more than there used to be. And so do a little research. I have a Katadyn water filter, but that's not the only really good one. In fact, I've got 2 or 3 water filters, for some that are lighter and some bigger. I have one that's big enough to provide water to a group of 40 people. So it filters water. It's a Katadyn, but again, it's for large groups, and some for small. Also, filtering water or purifying water through boiling. And again, these are skills. Have certain things ready, so tablets ready, some chlorine, so even some Clorox in the bathroom. A few drops of that in a quart of water will purify it in 30 minutes. But knowing how to filter it, having some basic filtration systems, this is a skill that is one of the essential skills. Water is absolutely essential, and generally most people don't know how to work with it. So I usually put a lot of emphasis on that. There's even a way to create solar stills and so forth, but that's a Boy Scout training, or Girl Scout. So, but here's the list. Again, making sure that you have this in the home. You've got the water bottles, you've got some storage, you have some bigger collapsible water container, so that if you have to go outside the house and collect the water, you have something bigger to do that with. And basic water filter, even like this Sawyer mini water filter system, it says it's good for 100,000 gallons. It lasts a long time, and it's very light. Okay. Fire is, again, if you may not be able to cook inside, there's a very nice way of making a fireplace with bricks or concrete blocks, but that's a part of a skill that be taught outside. But let's suppose that you're going to need to cook outside. You know, maybe you have a grill, you know, something like that. Do you know how to build a fire? You know, there are ways to build a fire even when it's raining, and how to find dry wood in the rain. And so those are higher level skills, but this level skill, level 2, is basically knowing how to make a fire, you know, and having some materials together that you can make it fairly easily. Make sure that you have some waterproof matches. You have at least 2 or 3 different sources of flame. And so you always have waterproof matches and lighters. Either one can go bad, and then you've got the option. And some instant fire starter. You know, you can get that at Army Navy surplus stores. All that stuff is at the surplus stores as well. And tissues. This is just basic fire starting. But then how to cook, how to build up a little fire area. I would start with just practicing going out and go to a picnic ground and learn how to make fire, collect the firewood in the kindling and so forth. The basic understanding of fire, even with 6 and 7-year-olds, I teach them how to make fires, and they love it. Here's the psychological aspect of this, that when people can have a few skills like fire, they just feel so good, like, oh, I can make a fire. It's something primitive and something inside of us that feels so fulfilling and secure, knowing that I can make a fire which can cook food, it can purify water, it can provide light, it can provide warmth, it can provide psychological security, and even security from animals and so forth. And it can provide signaling. Fire is one of those basic skills that is very, very useful to have. This is just the first level. Eventually, I teach people how to make fire with sparks, you know, using a ferro rod, and very simple, and everybody can do it. It's not. I know how to make a fire by rubbing sticks together too, but that's very inefficient. There's so much easier other ways of doing it now that it's not required to know all the basic primitive skills. Just having certain kinds of things. And level 3, that comes into that aspect. So fire, be thinking about that, but certainly the matches and this instant fire starter, that's available at Walmart. You know, all this is available at Walmart and online, but it's very common stuff here, no problem at all, in Army Navy surplus. Very important to have your lights. Keep a flashlight in your bag at all times. Keep it next to your bed, and so forth. Speaking about keeping next to your bed, always keep your shoes next to your bed. You know, a pair of shoes, and why, you say? Well, or slippers or something, because if in the night there's an earthquake and glass is broken, you can, if you start walking and cut your feet, you'll be slowed down, and you may not be able to get to where you need to go. So have your shoes really handy, a flashlight and shoes right next to your bed at all times. And that's a very good, it's a security knowing that, okay, if something happens, I'm ready to get up and move. You've got the lighting, you've got your protection for your feet, and so you can walk. Okay, or run as you need to be. Okay, lighting is essential at night for safety and for being able to be productive as needed. I always definitely have 3 or 4 flashlights around at different places, and you know, and there are different qualities. I have one here somewhere, but you know, I like, for example, I always have this one. This is an O light here, and this one, which way it goes? Anyway, that way. Anyway, there are so many different kinds of lights out there, but this is a, I definitely want something that is going to function, and not just the cheapest thing for lighting. So all of this can be an investment, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But a headlight is very good to have so that you can keep your hands free. It's very good to have a wind-up flashlight, you know, as well. So you have different sources of light available to you. Votive candles, again, you have lighters, even the glow sticks where you break them, and you have some instant light there. So you have several sources of light, and that could provide in a situation where you need to cook without electricity. You've got several different possibilities there, including some of those nice little candles and so forth. And it feels good when you have candles going too. Medical is essential. I've taken several. In fact, I was a medic in the U.S. Navy a few years ago, and but I do know how important it is to have some medical background. And so if you or someone else is injured, just the basic things like little burns or cuts and scrapes. And of course, as a scout leader, I had to be taking care of cuts and scrapes and burns and all that kind of stuff. Never much more serious, but I've had advanced level first aid training and so forth that, of course, that so you need to know how to take care of yourself and other people. So, but not everybody has to take first aid training. Basic is really good for everybody, I should say, but higher level, if you have a few people in amongst your friends who are trained, that's really good. Again, you can build community even in your neighborhood. Somebody was saying, well, I live out and away. Maybe even talk with neighbors and say, well, you know, if there's an emergency, shall we get together? Can we do something? What skills do you have? Oh, you're a nurse, okay? You're a doctor. You're and so forth, to be able to share those skills with each other. But go through that list, and basically you can get a first aid kit. These are a bunch of supplies that some of which are in the first aid kit, but don't forget your hygiene supplies, you know, and look at it and then think through what is not on that list. Medications. Okay, that's general medications. Personal medications, that's it. You have to make sure that you have your personal medication set aside and that you can rotate them, but you always have at least a month of supply ahead of stored away, and then and keep that rotation occurring. It's just essential if you've got certain conditions that require your medication. Food, down a little bit farther on the list. Well, the essential direction for food is to just stock up, first of all, on some basic supplies that you use regularly, and so build up your stock over time and start to rotate it. So maybe you have an extra 2 or 3 weeks or 1 month supply of food that you normally have. You know, so if you have let's say 1 bag of pasta every week, you've got 4 bags, and you take the one out, and then when you go shopping, you put the one back in the line. So, and they advance forward, and cans of soup or some things that are longer storage, but certainly the foods that you normally have that can be stocked up ahead of time. Fruits and vegetables can be dehydrated or freeze dried, so have a few of those available as well. Energy bars, trail mix, and things of that nature. Again, look through that list, but also knowing how to cook with that. It's just a basic list, but how to cook if your electric stoves are not working, or if your propane or your gas stoves are not functioning either. This is actually a really fun skill if you can learn how to cook over a fire, and or you have a little camping stoves. You know, you can get the little propane Coleman stoves. It's a really nice option to have in the home. And again, if you're sticking around, I personally, we know that you can get these little Coleman canisters, but I typically have invested in a like a 10-liter propane canister, and put in the lines and things like that. So I use it for camping, and also everything goes out of the house. I've got a source of heat, a source of cooking, and I've got the pots and pans and so forth. And so no problem. So again, just look through that list and see. but again, the key for food is, one, think through what you want to eat and normally do, stock up on that, and start to rotate it and bring it in and out. Have about a month's supply on hand, and then you'll feel much better. You'll know that, okay, I don't have to run out, go to the grocery store and fight for the toilet paper. You know, you've got a supply there, that whatever it is that you want to have in the home. Communication skills, again, you can go through this, but I have several whistles in case, you know, there's a situation where you separate a little bit or getting and need some help. A smartphone with battery backup. Wind-up radio. At this level, I would have, because with a wind-up radio, you have the option of hearing the emergency broadcast stations, and they'll because in emergency those come online, and all about the weather as well. So you can tap into, you can hear what's going on in the broader world around you, you know, in an emergency situation. So wind-up radios are very good to have. I think it's one of the basic things. An option here is the walkie-talkies. It's actually more of a level 3, but I put it in here in case you like to have that. I have little ham radios, you know, so that we can communicate at a distance, but they're not essential. I've had them for many years and never used them yet, but it's I have them, and the batteries are, I have to keep checking on batteries and things like that. So it's not that, walkie-talkies isn't the essential one, but the others pretty well are, to have that ready to go, and how to use these things. And then some basic tools, just very briefly. A pocket knife is essential. A multi-tool is very, very handy to have, like a Leatherman, where it's got other tools on. By the way, the pocket knives, I would get something like a Swiss Army knife, because it's got the scissors and a little saw blade and can opener. You can actually open up your soup cans or whatever, and bottle opener, so forth. The multi-tool also has the, like a Leatherman, you can look it up, but it has the pliers in it and other things like that. Here is the solar powered battery recharger, okay, so along with the battery, you know, so a battery pack with solar charger, very good. Crescent wrench. This is, it sounds odd, but in an emergency, and you have to, maybe fire, whatever it is, you need to turn off the gas, and generally you need a wrench to turn off the gas source outside. You can have a valve inside, but the gas is still coming inside the house. So turn it off at the source, or at the meter, and so it's good to have that tool just handy. I actually typically would keep the crescent wrench next to the valve, and so if I needed to shut it off, I've never had to, but it was there. Parachute cords, cordage is really good to have for a lot of things, including clothesline, or tying up the tent, or putting up a tarp, and so forth. But parachute cord is very strong and durable, and it has a variety of different functions in it that it's part of a training that goes on a little bit later. Sewing kits, great. Gorilla or duct tape, very good to have access to your fire extinguisher in the home as well. These are some basic tools. If you're going to have to go other places, having a map in a waterproof container, like a Ziploc baggie, anything like that. So in case you have to go somewhere, you've got the maps, especially if your GPS is not working. At least you still know what the routes are, the possibilities. So it's a really wise thing to do. Most people don't think like that these days. They think, oh, I've got my phone. But it's really good to have one. It could be necessary. Personal is very important, that you have your documents. You know, your essential documents are stored. I've got I even have it here in Austria. My documents are all together, including, you know, it could be medical, it could be, you know, the copies of my passport and so forth, phone numbers, all that kind of stuff. I've got set aside here to wherever I go when I'm traveling. I take that with me. or you've got it on a little data stick, to carry so that you have it. You need, for level 2, more cash is generally better. So where credit cards may or may not be working in certain situations. And so just have enough cash on hand, and your medical documents, prescriptions, sunglasses, again, notepad, pencils, inspirational books, some cards or games, good to have. Inspirational books in particular, so that keeps that mind lifted and inspired. And that reminds me about the food. Have some fun food too. Don't forget about having some chocolate, or some chocolate mix for the hot chocolates, or things that feel good. That it's not just about survival; it's enjoying it too, and it's important for the psyche to have that. And same with the books and the games. Try to keep it light, and don't take all this too seriously. We need to lighten up and just and maintain our meditations and connections with God inside. Security, I just, I don't give a whole lot of thought to it, but when we worked with communities, we organized security understanding, because it's a fact that if there's social unrest, we may need to take care of ourselves in some way. But the general attitude is that if people are coming to share food and ask, then generally I would just say share. That and give it to God. We're not fighting for our own survival. We're here to help other people too, and so. But just have that attitude that we're not resisting. We're just being a part of mankind, and keeping our hearts open is a real key for and building community and making new friends as well. But it is handy. You might have animals that are trying to get to your food supply or whatnot. So a walking stick and a little pepper spray can be useful in certain situations, but they're not deadly. They're just more to defend your situation. But again, it's not something that comes out of fear. It's just practical to have a walking stick and so forth. And yes, animals might be wanting to find your food source. They're hungry too, and maybe share with them a little bit too. It's the right attitude. And then finally on this list is, if it goes from a level 2 to a level 3, which is where you need to evacuate, you actually want to be prepared in level 2 for that. Level 3 is a whole nother level of equipment and training and and skills. But it's not needed in this particular level. But it's ideal to keep your car filled with gas up to at least a half or more at all times, because if there's a real emergency, in California it could be earthquakes at any time, or fires, as we know, and that you might have to leave an area fairly quickly. Well, those gas stations might have a line that's 2 miles long and run out just by the time you get to the pump. Have someone keep your tank filled so you can get out of the area, or at least half or more. I always keep an extra gallon or two stored of gasoline as well, so then I can just pop it in the car if I needed to. Again, have maps of the area, and in fact, it's very wise to have a planned route. Know your alternatives. If one area is you can't leave by a certain area because of whatever the reason is, or high traffic, know what your alternatives are and have the maps to support that. They help you with that too. GPS, of course, but if GPS is showing the alternative routes, everybody's going to know about that. Then, and so it might be useful to have the maps and so forth. And so that you have some planning done ahead of time. You connect. You have all of these things that are on this list are ready to go. You can just pop a lot of this stuff in your bags right away, and that's why you want to organize it a little bit beforehand. And some of this can actually be already put into bags, like some of that extra food storage and so forth, and ready to pop in the car. And And then, but you have a plan. Think it through ahead of time. Where would you go if down there in LA there was an earthquake that came and made made the situation very difficult, and you need to leave? Where would you go? Think it through a little bit, and have a plan, and that you've communicated. You have a plan for communicating, connecting with family and friends and your broader community. And so thinking this through is very wise ahead of time. And when you have put all of these things together that we've discussed very briefly, this is like a 2-day workshop, at least one day. When you've put this together, and not only the material level, but if you go back to being centered and unshaken in the midst of crash and breaking worlds, you find that place of inner security that comes from meditation, comes from prayer, comes from connecting with other people, comes from having thought through some of these things and have some skills and have some of the materials available. Skills, to my mind, are more important than the materials. You know, I could walk out the door tomorrow with none of this except my knife. I always take my knife and maybe a lighter, but or a sparker. That I know it's going to be fine. You know, I've developed the right attitude. Hopefully so. Well, it'll be tested maybe, but we'll see. And but I hope that the right attitude, the right skills, and some of the right materials. Then you just feel that it's because, especially that connection with God, it's all going to be fine. And that whatever the situation, you will have the confidence and the attunement inwardly to find the solution to any situation. And you'll be guided to be where you need to be with whom you need to be able to do what you need to do. And again, the little practice of this inward religion will free one from dire fears and colossal sufferings. There's nothing more important than staying connected with your higher self, with the Guru within, with God. And with all of this in place and practicing it on a regular basis and daily, all of these things, you will know, and you will know that everything is just beautiful and very perfect, and that the purpose of all of this that's happening is freedom. You will become free. You will be free of the fear. You'll be free of the anxieties, free of the concern, because everything is provided. God will provide us, and it works. That is how it works, unless we block it. And so with practice, it never needs to be blocked again. And you'll be able to be free for yourself and to take and help your friends and family as well to be free and happy, no matter what the situation.
What is usually done to, like, because obviously like washing machines and stuff like that aren't probably going to be operating. So what process do you usually do to like get the clothes clean?
Yeah, very good. That's part of hygiene. In fact, it's not just because you smell better, but in fact, it's a health issue. It can be. Normally, I would have, like, for example, emergency backup. I've got the clothes that I'm wearing, and I've got an extra pair. When this gets dirty, I've got an extra pair to put on that's clean, and the one that I take off is going to be washed, and just hand washed. You know, so part of that hygiene kit is some soap. You know, that was in that list too. So, and a bucket, you know, if you have some, or pail that you can, and just a minimal amount of water, you know, that, but you can wash underwear and things like that, especially those layers that in a smaller amount of water with a little bit of soap. So you've got one that's on, one that is ready to be put on, and one that's being washed and dried. Now, so you can rotate among them. That's sort of the principle of it. That doesn't mean you have to limit yourself to 3 layers. By the way, if that's where the selection of clothes comes in, that cotton takes longer to dry. some of the other kind of clothes that polypropylene, there some things like polyester clothes, we say, I don't like the feel of it. But at REI, you can go and buy some of this really beautiful material. It's expensive, unfortunately, but you can almost shake it and it's dry. And it doesn't absorb the water, but it feels good on the skin, and it's little microfibers, I think, and it cleans faster. It doesn't absorb the body moisture and things like that. Cotton absorbs all that moisture from the body and starts to develop the bacteria and smells. So, but that's basically it. Have 3 or 4 sets of clothes, including extra socks, underwear, especially 3 or 4 of those sets, the underwear levels. And then the shirts, basically I have 2 really good pairs of pants. I have a pair of pants that I bought at REI in 1997. And I walked through Scotland for 6 months, basically in that same pair of pants, because they're so good that every once in a while I'd wash them and hang them up because they're not cotton. And I still have that same pair of pants, and they're still really good. And so if you get the good quality things and do a little research, you find that it's easier to take care of them that way. So it's just a thought. So does that answer it, Chris? Is that close enough?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Any
Hi,
other
Kabir.
thoughts?
Hi, Kabir.
Hi. Hi, Claire.
I'm in Australia, so like many of us, yes, like many of us, I've spent huge chunks of my life outdoors and camping. So this talk was great, and I just wanted to say for the ladies who might be new to this kind of thing, a couple of things you can do is, this is a Storm brand whistle. I bought this on Amazon. It's one of the loudest whistles you can buy. And this is on my key ring permanently. And Kabir, I'm a wildlife photographer, so often I'm out there alone in remote spots. This is on me at all times.
Yes, that's right.
Yes, I also have, I have 2 torches. This is my bedside torch. I'm married, I have a partner, but this is a torch that's beside my bed at all times. It's also a weapon, as you can see, it's quite solid.
Yep.
And I have a mag light torch, which is a more portable torch. It's about that big. They're very sturdy mag light brands, and that
mag lights are strong. Yeah.
Yes. And
high quality.
High quality. And I would also say, if you're not used to camping, get yourself a 2-man tent and practice setting it up and dismantling it in your lounge room or your bedroom at home.
Yep.
Practice doing it so you're really comfortable doing it quickly and packing it down, and so that you can do it in low lighting situations at dusk or dawn. So just some couple of tips for you, but it was such a great talk. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Claire. That's very good too. It actually becomes fun. When you have a few skills and a few things together, have fun. I remember in Assisi when we did a training in Assisi with about 30 people, and we planned this camping trip. Everybody got all their gear and everything. Most people didn't know how to use it. So we said, let's go and we'll do trainings. It happened to be, we went up on top of a mountain where we had a campground, a camping area. And it happened to be one of the biggest storms of the whole year at the same time that we were doing this. We were going to go have fun and relax. Well, actually, people still talk about it, and that was like 20 some years ago, because it was pouring rain and high winds up on that mountain. And yet we were putting up our tents. We put up tarps over everything. We cooked pizza outside on a campfire during the rainstorm in the wind. And people were amazed. How can we do that? We all were warm. We were dry. We were taken care of. It comes from skill, and it also comes from right attitude. And it really comes from working together, community. People have different resources, different needs, and different solutions that we collectively could take care of each other. It was fantastic. So the idea is just go practice. So what Claire was saying, practice a little bit, try to get a little whatever you purchase, make sure you know how to use it and take care of it, and start to maybe have a bag or two where you can start to put some of these things inside in case it's, I mean, we do know practically speaking, an earthquake can happen. That is one of the scenarios. It could be a moderate that takes out maybe the electricity for a while. It could be more severe where you have to evacuate quickly and have a plan. But if you have your items together, or at least a good many of these together already, and you just grab a bag and go. And they call it a go bag, you know, that you're really ready to have, to be out of the house within minutes. And that's a very good thing to have. And then you put that close to the door or somewhere that's easy access for you to get if you have to go. Especially, by the way, if you have children, that you also think through this list for other family members. What do the children need to provide a little extra security for them as well? That's where some storybooks come in, and some games, and some food that they really like. You know, things that are comfort food, that's important. Psychological comfort food is a requirement. And that you have not just one water bottle, everybody has a water bottle. You know, everybody has a pack. And so again, the more the others that you're taking care of, think it through a little more thoroughly and completely. It's a step-by-step process, by the way, and it's not that it all has to be done now, but it should be started now if you haven't yet. Do some research online. You can buy all these things online, and so starting together, look at your budget and see what you can afford, and start to invest a little bit more step by step, and build it up. I've been building mine for 25 years, you know, and now I'm at the point where there's something better. I let go of something and replace it with a higher quality, you know, something that more can last longer, be higher level resource for me. So, okay. Any other, sorry, I went off on tangent there, but anything else anyone like to add?
What is your take on like portable like butane, like little portable butane stoves?
Yeah.
Come in like the little carry case with the.
Yeah, well, you know, they require those little canisters.
Right.
And they're instant access. That's good to have, you know. But you know what? I have these little. You can research it. Camps, little stoves that you just put a few twigs in it, and you can cook with a few bits of sticks, little sticks that you find everywhere. Butane and propane, good to have. As a backup. Like I said, though, I would get away personally. Yes, canister is a quick and easy solution, so have it. That's great. There's no reason not to. But and as Terry said here, sterno is also really good. There's I think on the list there's a little stove that basically is like a little sterno stove that it's low heat. It's easy, just light it. And however, there might be a scenario where you run out of that. It's not possible to get the little supplies anymore. And so if you're dependent on that, then you're in trouble, potentially. It's a situational issue. But so in addition, if you have you can buy these bigger canisters of propane that hook right into the propane stoves with a line. Instead of the canister, you can use a propane tank. That's what I've done. So I've adapted it a little bit. And I bought that at Kmart, I think it was, something like that. And they're not that difficult to get. And ultimately, to know how to cook over fire is a good thing to know. And to have even some of these little, so know how to build a fire, know a little bit about that, and have fun learning. And then also some of these little stoves that I have are amazing things that you're just cooking with little twigs. I can and cook for an hour with a little pile of twigs. So it's really nice. Anyway, that's a different skill. So
thank you, Kabir.
Okay.
Thank you so much for being with
Thank
us.
you.
Oh, namaste. It's so good to see you.